Hello everybody, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. In today's video we are going to talk about this wonderful book which I have just finished and I am in love. I am obsessed. I am in love with this book. You have to read it. You have to read it. Don't even argue with me. Don't even argue with me. You have to read this book. This is a novel by Portuguese writer Essa de Queiroz, and Wikipedia says so he is a classic Portuguese writer from the 19th century, but it is said that Zola considered him to be far greater than Flaubert. And in the London Observer, Jonathan Keats ranked him alongside Dickens, Balzac and Tolstoy. You see, the man is up there. So, and the novel is great. The novel is called The City and the Mountains. It's his last work. It was published after his death. So I started his novels from the end. I started with his very last novel, and I guess, I don't know, I haven't read the rest of them, but who knows, maybe it's the greatest. Don't quote me on that though. When I was reading this book, it felt like it was written for me because when I was reading it I was like, exactly, true, exactly. It's like I was talking to my soulmate. It's like my soulmate writer was just writing a novel for me. So I felt I was on the cloud 7 with this novel. I was on the cloud even maybe 11 or I don't know, very high cloud. So I was very happy. Let's talk about the novel. I believe that this book is even more relative today than it was when it was first written, because the problems that he talks about in this book, which existed before, I believe that in our times they have multiplied tenfold. They have increased and the world has become even more crazy and insane than what it used to be in the world of Essa de Queiroz. And apparently it already was crazy and insane in his years and in his times, but in our times it has multiplied tenfold. It felt to me like this novel really is way more relative today than when it was first written. I don't know if you have ever met such a novel, but here it is. Let's talk about the plot a little bit. We have our main character. His name is Jacinto. I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly. Jacinto. I will call him Jacinto. He is also called Prince. Jacinto is a descendant of a very wealthy Portuguese family. His family is landowners. They're very rich. And he was born and he grew up in Paris. His house is on Champs-Élysées. So the very heart of Paris. It's an address to die for. And that's where he was born, that's where he grew up. He has everything his heart desires. He has all the money in the world. He can afford everything he wants. He is not a spoiled man you would expect him to be. He's educated, he is warm-hearted, he is kind-hearted, and he has a belief. He has a faith, he has a philosophy. Call it whatever you like. Jacinto believes that a man can be superlatively happy only when he is superlatively civilized. Jacinto believes in civilization. He believes that only civilization can provide the ultimate happiness for people, for men. One of his friends was so impressed with this idea that he even came up with this algebraic formula, which says absolute knowledge multiplied by absolute power equals absolute happiness. So that's what our Jacinto believes in. He doesn't only believe it, he also lives this. He models his life after this belief and after this philosophy. He has 30,000 books in his library of all kinds. He has poetry, he has novels, he has scientific literature, he has philosophical literature, he has 30,000 books. He even tries to read them. He has also installed a telescope in his house. And not only telescope, he has equipped his house with every possible technological advance that you could come up with at his time. He has all different types of machines one could imagine. Here, let me read you a little bit. He explains his belief and he explains what he believes in. So the example that he gives, he says, here is the Fernandez. The Fernandez is his friend. Jacinto said, leaning on the observatory window, you will find conclusive proof of the theory that rules my life. For with these keen, quick eyes of ours, received from Mother Nature herself, we can barely see the lit window in that shop over there, on the other side of the avenue. Nothing more. However, if I add to my eyes the two simple lenses of a pair of horse racing binoculars, I can see through the glass to the hams, cheeses, jars of jam and boxes of prunes. I conclude, therefore, that it is a grocer's shop. This, I believe, gives me a positive advantage over you, who with your naked eye can see only the lit window. However, if instead of those two simple lenses I were to use my more scientifically advanced telescope, I would see beyond all that to Mars, with its seas and snows and canals, could see the outline of its gulfs, the whole geography of a planet that exists thousands of lieues from Champs-Élysées. And what about another, still more brilliant idea? Here you have the primitive eye, the eye of nature, raised by civilization to its maximum power of vision. As regards eyes, clearly I, the civilized man, am happier than the uncivilized man, because I can discover the realities of the universe about which he knows nothing and which he is therefore deprived of. If you apply that proof to all the organs, you will understand my principle. Civilization kind of gives you more opportunities. Civilization gives you more power over nature, and yeah, basically makes you more powerful and more capable. That's what, and the more capable you are, the more power you have, the happier you are. That's Jacinto's idea. His friend quite disagrees, so that's what his friend thinks to himself, though he says nothing because he's a good man and he doesn't want to deprive his friend of a belief that gives him ground. So that's what the Fernandez thinks. And then Jacinto talks about his servant. His servant's name is Cricket, and one of his friend, who is like also a very rich man. And so Jacinto concludes that his rich friend is much happier than Cricket because he has more civilization around him, basically. And then the Fernandez. It didn't seem to me irrefutably true that Renan was necessarily happier than Cricket, nor could I see what spiritual or temporal advantages was to be gained from being able to peer through space at the smudgy spots on a planet or across the avenue des Champs-Élysées at the hems hanging in the grocer's shop window. Nevertheless, I assured him that of course I agreed with him, because I'm a good fella and would never try to dislodge from another man's mind any idea in which he finds security, discipline, and a source of energy. So yeah, basically he said nothing, but he quite disagreed. So that's an example of Jacinto's idea. The Fernandez, the friend whom I have just quoted, calls his friend Prince, because Jacinto lives in a very rich house and at the heart of Paris. He has everything his heart desires, he has all the money he wants, he basically is a prince. I do believe that for Essa de Queiroz it was essential to make this character rich, because then this character would be able to afford anything his heart desires. So by making Jacinto rich, Essa de Queiroz just ensures that our protagonist has experienced all of the civilization, everything you can imagine, everything you could ask for, Jacinto has, and he has the opportunity to experience, and he has all the inquisitiveness and all the wish to experience. Naturally, Jacinto's idea of civilization was inseparable from the idea of the city. And in the novel, these two words, civilization and city, are written with capital C. Like an idea, you know, like ideas of sorts. The city's technological advances give Jacinto the idea of his superiority. City makes him feel secure. The city makes him feel protected. It gives him ground to stand on. He also believes that the only thing that separates a human from an animal is the human's ability to think. And as civilization progresses and all the devices and machines basically do the work for you, you, because of that, have more time to think, and you have more time to engage in the activities of philosophizing, discussing different ideas. And that, in Jacinto's perception and in Jacinto's philosophy, that's what makes you human. He feels very different when he is in the nature. He has been there once. He and the Fernandez went to the woods for some reason, and Jacinto was terrified. He was disgusted, he was terrified, he didn't know how to behave, and more than that, he understood that everything that he believed in the city, every protection that he had in the city, he was deprived of in the nature, and all his ideas meant nothing when he was in the woods. Basically, nature made him feel weak, scared, insecure, and fragile, unlike the city. That's why, terrified, he quickly ran back to Paris, and he didn't spend much time in the nature with the Fernandez, so their trip wasn't a success. But naturally, when the Fernandez is summoned back to Portugal, to his family estate, because he had to help his uncle with something, Jacinto was terrified. Jacinto was so worried, genuinely worried of his friend and of the prospects of his friend losing his humanity because he is going to the nature. Jacinto was terrified, and he was actively advising the Fernandez what the Fernandez should take with him back to Portugal in order not to lose his humanity. What kind of books, what kind of devices, all types of stuff. It's all very funny. This novel is hilarious. Like, this novel is just hilarious. I was laughing all the way through. This novel is joyful. It's a pure joy. It's a pure joy. So yeah, it all was very funny. 7 years passes. These 7 years, the Fernandez, because he is the narrator of the novel, the Fernandez spent in his family estate, with his family, with his uncle, with his aunt. He just a little bit, very shortly, describes his activities, what he did there, how some children were born, somebody died, somebody got married. So, you know, very traditional, very normal, everyday life of a village, very simple life. Somebody born, somebody died, somebody got married, somebody grew up and went to university. Very normal life. Picking up apples, growing vegetables, cooking soups, you know, just normal, simple life. 7 years later, his uncle has died, and on business, the Fernandez had to go back to Paris. And 7 years later, the Fernandez meets his beloved friend, his prince, again back in Paris. But Prince is very different from the person he used to be. He is very melancholic. He is very sad. He is very bored. He is bored out of his wits. There is nothing of that young, excited, curious boy left in him. His house has grown. It has even more devices, it has even more machinery. It has machine to stamp stamps on his envelopes when he writes letters. It has a machine to button up his shirt when he needs to go out somewhere. He has a machine to cut his nails. He has 20 different hair brushes to brush his hair, and nothing brings joy to him. He is tired of all the social engagements he has to do, and all of these engagements are very inconsequential. People talk about nothing really, they do nothing really, they discuss different ideas, one idea changes the other one, and then a new one comes. There is no truth, there is no lie, but everything in a big scope is the same, and Jacinto is just bored out of his wits. The people that surround him, that you will see in the novel, he shows different social engagements that Jacinto has to do. People are very shallow. He has no real friend in the city except the Fernandez. The Fernandez, now that he has come, is his closest and best and the most genuine friend. All the rest are there just because Jacinto is a rich man and he is a good connection to have. He is a good person to have around. He gives parties, he feeds well, his cooks cook good food, but not a single genuine relationship. The most interesting, I guess the brightest example of that is his relationship with women. He doesn't really have a lover, or he doesn't really have a woman in whom he's like romantically interested in, but he does support financially a prostitute. So apparently in Paris there was this practice when there is a prostitute, but because just one man cannot support her because it's very expensive, a few men share the responsibility. So a few 3 to 4 men, they just put their money together and they support this one prostitute and they use her services, even though Jacinto, for example, doesn't use her services. He just supports it because it's kind of social responsibility. He has to do it, even though he really has no interest in the woman herself. It's civilization. It's kind of what you have to do in civilization. Support a prostitute, a very rich prostitute. Jacinto, being not a stupid man, being quite an educated man, a man with a good heart, he sees the futility of all this world. He sees the shallowness of all this world. But he continues to cling to his idea. He continues to cling to the philosophy of the city and to philosophy of the civilization. He just does not want to let it go, and he tries to justify it in all different manners. I love this book so much because I really do think that this book gives a very shrewd and very precise diagnosis to our society as a whole. You can disagree with me, I can be wrong, I don't know, but it's just my feeling. It's just my personal feeling. I do think that whatever is wrong with Jacinto in this book, whatever is wrong with Paris in this book, the same exact thing is wrong with our world today. In the first part of the novel, Essai de Queiroz, with humor, with shrewdness, with understanding, even with some kind of love, but he does show the futility, the superficiality of civilization. The very apotheosis of this whole civilization is shown to you in the very last chapter. The very last chapter is just everything ugly, everything dirty, everything filthy is just taken and just thrown you in the face in the last chapter of this novel, and you just throw it away, just like the Fernandez does. He throws this civilization into a garbage bin, and you feel like doing the same. The second part of this book is an anthem, is an anthem of love to the simple living, to the living in the lap of nature, to living in agreement with nature, to living together with nature. And it's beautiful and it's joyful, and it shows how much family means for a person, how much truly genuine friends mean for a person. Not many of them, not a whole society of them, but just 1 or 2, but truly genuine friends, people who actually do care about you, people who actually genuinely do love you. How important they are, and how therapeutic they are for people's souls. And the second part shows how nature and the simple living in a way that God meant for all of us to live in, is actually capable of curing any disease of soul, any disease of your heart. And yeah, the second part is just a pure joy. It's a pure joy, it's beautiful, and I was just in love. This whole novel, actually the whole novel is very joyful. The first part is by no means disgusting. It's very funny. This book is actually very, very reminiscent of Don Quixote, and I believe that he kind of modeled his storytelling after Don Quixote, the prince being Don Quixote and the Fernandez being Sancho Panza. He even mentions the book and the novel as well. Prince is very reminiscent of Don Quixote because he is just as Don Quixote obsessed with books. Don Quixote had a huge library of chivalry novels. Our character has a huge library of all types of books. Don Quixote is obsessed with the idea of chivalry and knights, and he wants to become a knight himself. Jacinto, however, is obsessed with the idea of civilization, and he kinda is a knight of civilization, if you imagine this. Because he adopts everything he can find, every small device. And just like Don Quixote is fighting his imaginary enemies and protecting his imaginary victims, Jacinto is clinging to the idea, and he is defending this imaginary idea of civilization that brings happiness and prosperity to all. So yeah, this is very much reminiscent of Don Quixote, and just like Don Quixote is joyful and funny, so is this book. It is joyful and funny, and the relationship between Jacinto and the Fernandez is very healthy, very wholesome. They are true friends. They truly both respect each other, and they truly both love each other. Like, this is a very healthy, very genuine friendship, and such relationships are always a joy to read about. Just like the relationship between Sancho Panza and Don Quixote, in my case, just for the best part about Don Quixote novel. Relationship here also make this novel a joy to read. So yeah, there you have it, The City and the Mountains. I would highly recommend this novel for your perusal. If you want something inspiring, if you want something uplifting. After I read this book, I'm like, I need a house in the woods. I urgently need a house in the woods. So I started searching for houses in villages. I am still searching for them. I do want a house in the woods, so it's a very inspiring novel. It just tells you, like, go buy house in the woods in a small village and just go there and live there. And I'm like, I'm searching for a house in a Japanese village. So yeah, this book is a joy. This book is a joy. It's my first introduction to Essai de Queiroz, and I already love it. I have another book by him in English here, but when I was in Russia, I actually purchased his whole collection of his novels in Russian. So I have his all novels collection, which I'm very delighted about, and I brought it to Japan, so I'm gonna read them. So yeah, great book. Pick it up and read it. You will not regret it. I am 99% sure that you will not regret reading this book. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope that you will give this book a try, because it's wonderful and I am in love, and I'm going to continue with Essai de Queiroz more. And for now, yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a very good day. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're reading good books and enjoying them. And I will see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.